Andriana Alexis. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the Director of Grant Making and Impact at SJF. I have a few of my colleagues on here this afternoon that are going to help us through this presentation. So I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, starting with Moose.
Hi, everyone. Muzaf Sal, he, him, his, and I am the Grant Making and Impact Senior Manager here at SJF. Passing to Emily.
Hi all, I'm Emily, she, her pronouns, and I am a project manager at SGF, which means I mostly work with giving projects, but also help out with grant making and impact in general. And I'll pass to Adiza.
Hello, Adiza Ame, she, her pronouns, another project manager at SGF, and I'll pass it to Sharon.
Hi, I am Sharon, Strategic Communications Manager at SJF as of 3 weeks ago, and I will pass to Deja.
Hi, I'm Deja. I use they and she pronouns, and I'm the grant making and database coordinator, also as of 3 weeks ago. And I'll pass it to Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm also new hire as of 3 weeks ago to SJF, and I'm the new development manager. And I think that's all of us on here, unless I'm missing someone.
No, I think it's all of us on here for today. As you can see, we're filling our team early in the year. So we have some new folks joining us and then some of the other folks that have been here for a while. So we're gonna dive in and get started. Just heads up, we'll run through our program and then leave space for questions and answers at the end. So feel free to hold your questions or put them in the chat as they come up and we'll make sure we get to answering them, okay? I think, Emily, you're on our screen share. Awesome, thank you. And Moose, I'll pop it to you to get us started.
Welcome, folks. This is the 2025 Seed Grant Cycle Information Session. We paused this grant cycle in 2024 and are relaunching it now in 2025. So y'all will get all of the seed grant information, and then there's space for you all to ask questions as well. Feel free, as we're going through the presentation, to put things into the chat. And we'll pause occasionally to take questions as we go through as well, but there is space at the end also. And just repeating, we are recording, so if you want to be off camera, please feel free to be on or off camera. After this information session, I will send out a recording and these slides to everyone that registered for this through Zoom. So if you haven't registered through Zoom, please put your email in the chat, but everyone here should have already done that through Zoom, so I should be able to get all this information over to you. Next slide. All right, as we're going through this, I'm asking folks to introduce themselves in the chat, please. You can include your name, pronoun, your organizational affiliation, and your role and title, and have you ever received a grant from SJF? So feel free to just start introducing yourselves in the chat. Next slide. Cool. Quick agenda today. First we'll start with the overview and context of what the 2025 seed grant is. We'll give some description and background. We'll talk about the SJF community organizing framework, which is how we evaluate grants. We'll talk about eligibility and ineligibility. We'll go through what the application looks like, how we evaluate grants. We'll go over the timeline. There's some important links and resources we'll share at the end with folks. And then, like we said, there's space at the end for questions and discussion as well. Next slide. All right, starting with overview and context, we can go to the next slide.
Awesome. Thank you. Passing over the overview and context to me. So our 2025 seed grant cycle are giving away grant awards that are one-year grants of $5,000. Our priority consideration, SJF always has a priority consideration for every grant we do. The priority consideration are organizations that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color led organizations. So they have a majority of one of those demographics, 51% or more, or organizations conducting most of their work within reservation communities and or in rural small towns as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. This grant can fund organizations with a 501c3 or C4 status as determined by the IRS that are can fund American Indian, Native American, First Nation, tribal government or agencies. organizations that are fiscally sponsored by a 501c3, 501c4, or tribal government. And then organizations can apply without a fiscal sponsorship, but you must confirm that you have a fiscal sponsorship before the grant is awarded. So you can apply without it if you're in process, but you will definitely need to have it by the time the grant is awarded. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the seed grant descriptions. Seed grants will provide small, unrestricted funds for new groups developing their community organizing work, but who do not yet meet all of SJF's community organizing framework criteria, which we'll go through in a bit. And therefore would not be eligible for our regular grants. So just saying, if you're eligible for our regular grants, usually you meet all of our framework. If you don't meet all of the framework, you wouldn't be eligible, which means for our regular grants, which means this grant might be a great opportunity for you. If your organization is less than 3 years old, has never been funded by SJF, and is currently doing or planning on community organizing work, then you are eligible to apply for a $5,000 seed grant. Seed grants are going to be awarded quarterly this year, Q1 through Q3, throughout the year until we have no more funds available to give for them. There are 3 rounds of seed grants made in 2025. We're looking forward to giving up to $75,000 away total this year in seed grants. And the grant committee will meet each quarter to review all applications received by the end of the quarter that they're scoring for. Next slide, please. So the eligibility for the seed grant specifically is you have never received a regular SJF grant or seed grant from SJF in the past. You are a new or emerging organization or have doing organizing work, and we define new or emerging as 3 years old or younger. And you can demonstrate that you are using a community organizing approach or actively building towards a community organizing as defined by our community organizing framework. Before we get into the framework, ineligibility, we do not fund, SJF just generally does not fund individuals, endowments, or capital campaigns. General operating requests from organizations that primarily provide direct service to individuals and families. Direct service organizations can apply for project-specific funds for projects that fit our definition of a community organizing, which you'll see in our framework in a bit. We do not fund publications, reports, workshops, classes, conferences, media events, arts, theater productions, research, or litigation efforts unless they are a part of an ongoing community organizing effort. Environmental work, unless it's aimed at achieving social justice goals, is not also we don't fund. So if you're doing environmental work that's focused on undoing environmental racism or cultural resource conservation projects, those things we do fund because it's connected to organizing work, social justice goals, but not just general environmental work. And projects sponsored primarily by a government agency, we do not fund. Passing this over to Adiza.
Okay, so for grant screening, we evaluate grants in the following areas. They are led by the people the organizations are led by the people most directly affected by the issues the organization is working on. The grant and the organization continuously builds leadership from within its own membership base or community. The organization works to understand and address the root causes of the issues, not just the symptoms. The organization brings people together to build power they wouldn't have individually. They use that power to create systemic change, which includes altering unjust power relations. And the organization sees itself as part of a larger movement for social change and works towards strengthening that movement.
Thank you, folks. Could we go back to the previous slide really quickly, please? Thank you, Emily. SJF developed these 6 characteristics that we look for in an organization that will fund. We generally do not fund organizations that are doing community organizing for work that do not meet these 6 characteristics, unless you're applying for the seed grant. If you don't meet one or more of these 6 characteristics, you can still apply for the seed grant. As you'll see in the application, we'll ask you how you're building towards this community organizing framework, even though you may not be there yet. So you'll see that in the application questions here in a minute. We can go to the next slide now. I'm going to actually, let me pause. Are there any questions or concerns? And if you have a question, feel free. There we go. Castell, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, so the organization that we're building is for an initiative to create an office that would give direct resources to victims of police violence. So the organization itself would not give those direct resources, but rather we're building towards that. Would that still qualify?
Your project for an organization will just have to make a case about how it is aligned, or will be doing the work of the community organizing framework.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So as long as it makes that case, then the grant makers will decide and score about whether it goes through or not. If it doesn't make that case, it'll be screened out. And again, to Musa's point, it doesn't have to hit all of those, but should explain how it is working towards or intends to be moving in the direction of the community organizing work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I see a
Question
couple
in the
questions
chat.
in the chat. Thank you. Deja, if you could read those out, please. Thanks.
Yeah, can do. We have a question from B. How many seed grants does SJF plan to grant per quarter?
5. Is that correct? 5. Yep.
Great. And then a question from Rania. How do you define and evaluate systemic and undoing power relations within your community organizing framework?
How do you define? Sorry, I have to reread it. Is there a specific part of our community organizing that you're referencing? The uses the power to create systemic change, right? Is that what you mean? I'm gonna assume that's the one.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
one I meant, is the second to last bullet.
Thank you.
Point.
Yeah. The question, which you'll see in the application, actually asks you all to give an example of a systemic change that your project or work intends to create or hopes to create or has created in the past, and how that work then, if you're thinking about power relations, how you build power for folks who don't usually have power and how they are involved in the opportunity of creating that systemic change. So in the actual application, you'll see it says, please provide an example. And that's how we assess.
Great. There's a couple more questions in the chat. A question from Chris. Our nonprofit was established in 2020, but no activities occurred until 2024 when we formed to working board, began to develop structures and systems, and strategically built cohort partners. Are we still eligible to apply?
Your project, so the project work and work of the organization is just now happening in 2024. I would say I would say you're open to apply.
And then there's another question. I think it's the last one for this section from Mary. If our organization did receive an SJF grant in the past, we are not eligible to apply for the seed grant, correct?
Correct.
Great. Those are our questions for the time being.
Thank you. Let's get into show y'all what the application looks like.
Awesome. There are 3 parts to this grant application. The first one is org info. We do not evaluate any of this section. This is just basic information that we need about your organization to basically confirm that you're eligible, and if you get awarded the funds, to know who we need to send these funds to. So it's project name, mission statement, your current and last year budget. We only need your operating budget number. You do not need to attach a full budget worksheet. We do not require that. A short summary of your grant request. This is 2 to 3 sentences. This is when we're out in the community sharing information about the grants that we funded. This is where we'll pull some of that information from. An authorized signer for your organization. This could be you, the person filling out the application. Um, if you are not an authorized signer for your organization, a lot of times it's an ED or a development director or a board president or chair that is the authorized signer. Please include their information here. If you are awarded the funds, we need to send the grant agreement to the authorized signer to get their signature on it. And it just helps streamline the process if we have this information up front so that we can get you your money as quickly as possible. Next slide. We ask for your organizational tax status. So are you C3? Are you C4? Are you a American Indian tribal government? The federally recognized, I forgot to remove, you do not need to be federally recognized as long as you are an organized group of folks. A fiscal letter if you're fiscally sponsored, so just a confirmation from your fiscal sponsor. It can be a letter from them or it can be your actual fiscal sponsorship agreement that's been signed by the fiscal sponsor and by you as the project org. You can still apply for this grant even if you do not have a status finalized yet. So if you're still looking for a fiscal sponsor, please feel free to apply. We just ask that you have a fiscal sponsor confirmed by the time the grant is awarded. You do not need to include in-kind expenses and revenue in our budget. We just need your operating number. Fiscal sponsorship follow-up. If you are fiscally sponsored by a C3 or C4, we also need your fiscal sponsor's specific information. So a contact person, their email address, their mailing address, their EIN number, because they will also need to sign the grant contract. And again, as much of this information as you can provide upfront, it just helps streamline the process so that you can get your funds quicker. Next slide. The second part of the application is a narrative. This is the bulk of the application. This is also what we will be evaluating you on. So you'll see that these questions are also aligned with the community organizing framework. Oh, going back to the previous slide. Thank you. I'll read through these. Question number 1, to provide some context to your current work, please briefly give an overview of your organization's history and significant milestones, accomplishments, developments that are key to understanding the work. Question number 2, what issues does your organization address? What communities are most impacted by the issues you address? How are the communities involved in your organization? For example, members, leadership bodies, board staff. So are they volunteers? Are they folks you all are organizing with? Are they actually in leadership positions in the org? And then if communities most impacted are not currently involved, please explain how you are working towards their involvement and leadership. Question number 3, how is your organization addressing the root causes of the issue? If you are not currently addressing the root causes, please explain how you plan on addressing them. Question number 4, please outline how your organization brings or is planning to bring people together to build power for collective action. Next slide. Question number 5, how does your organization understand your role in the movement for Black liberation and Indigenous sovereignty? Question number 6, are you partnering or collaborating with other groups? If so, please tell us which groups you are collaborating with and how those relationships are helping your group establish itself. Question number 7, while we know it can be difficult to predict your work, please give us an idea of your goals, specific activities, and strategies for your work over the next year. And then last but not least, this one is optional. Is there anything else you would like the grant committee to know about your organization or the work you hold? Each of these questions has a 2,000 character per prompt limit, and that includes spaces. Next slide. The third part of the application are 2 different attachments that we'll need. The first one is the diversity chart, which shows evaluators which identities are represented in the organization. You should list out your board and staff. Those are required. If you have information on active volunteers or members, if you're a membership-based org, you can also include those numbers. That section is optional. You also have the opportunity to share demographic information like race, gender, age, and age categories. This chart helps us, SJF and the grant panelists that are evaluating your application, evaluate whether the most impacted community members and folks that you're working with are in leadership positions and present throughout the organization. Again, that's to align with our community organizing framework and our own value that we want to fund the folks that are most impacted by an issue. Some organizations may also include other identities. If there is, like you can self-identify if a specific category isn't listed here, and that's that section 4 at the bottom. You can write in categories such as immigrant, criminal justice impacted, farm workers, etc. I'm going to pause. The diversity chart is a really, really important component of your application. It is mandatory. You will not get funded. You will be screened out if this attachment is not there. So I want to pause to see if folks have any questions or concerns. Okay, next slide. The second attachment is your fiscal letter. This is just a letter confirming your organization status. So if you're a C3 or C4, we need your tax exemption letter from the IRS. If you are a C4, grant funds cannot be used for lobbying or endorsing an elected official. They can only be used for community organizing work. If you are a fiscally sponsored org, we need a letter confirming that from your fiscal sponsor, or you can attach your fiscal sponsorship contract or agreement. If you do not have a fiscal sponsor confirmed yet, you do not need to include an attachment, but we will request that if you're awarded funds. So you should be in the process of confirming a fiscal sponsor if you're applying for this grant. Next slide. All right, we use this grant portal. It's called Foundant. That's how folks can apply for grants at SJF, not only the seed grant, but any other grants in the future that you want to apply for. This link here, which will be sent out to you afterwards, will take you to our grant portal. If you already have an account, you can log in. If you have a Founded account for a different organization, your login will not work here. You have to create one specifically for the SJF portal. If you are unsure if your org has an account or not, please email us. I'll share an email at the end of this application, at the end of this presentation, and you can email us to confirm. If we confirm that you don't have an account, you just click the Create New Account button and you can create an account for your organization. Please do not apply through your fiscal sponsor's account. Please create one specifically for your organization. That will also help streamline the process. Next slide. I'm going to share a little bit about how evaluation works. All grants are evaluated by a community panel. We, as SJF staff, do not make decisions on which grants we're going to fund. We will have 5 community panelists, different walks of life, different regions throughout the 5-state area who are going to read every application, score the applications, and then actually come together for a democratic decision-making meeting. And that can often be 1 or 2 or 3 meetings. What they'll do is, Andrea, I see you put a question. I'll get to you in just a minute. What they'll do is they'll look at your application and the scoring form. This is what it looks like in the grant portal for them. And then they'll score your application based on 1 through 4. And that'll develop a percentage. Next slide. It'll develop a percentage score for your application. That percentage does not indicate whether you'll get funded or not. You can have a 95% score, which is an A, and still not get funded. You can also have a lower score, 80%, 70%, and you do get funded. We make those final decisions in a decision-making meeting where everyone shares their thoughts and opinions, and we actually democratically make a decision. Next slide. All right, I'll talk through the timeline and then we'll get to questions because there's only a couple slides left. Oh, Andriana.
Nope, go ahead.
All right, we are doing 3 rounds of the seed grants, Q1, Q2, Q3. So the Q1 applications close on February 20th, and the decision making will happen in March. So by the end of March, you should be notified of the decision. And then Q2, the application deadline is May 29th. We'll make decisions in July. Q3, the application deadline will be September 4th, and we'll make decisions in October. Now I'm going to pause for questions. I know there was a couple in the chat. Deja, if you could help by reading those out.
Absolutely. So the question from Andrea was, can you talk further about the members category? We have some members that use our commissary kitchen. Would we include them in the member category?
Yeah, the member section is optional. The ones that we actually require are your leadership or board, so whatever your leadership body is, and then your actual staff members. If you have that information for demographics, you can include it. It's not mandatory.
Great. And then question from Castile. Sorry if you already answered this, but if you don't make the cut for 1 quarter, do you need to reapply?
Yes,
Yes.
you can reapply. Before you reapply, you should request a feedback meeting. We provide all folks that we don't fund a grant for to have a feedback meeting with us so that we can give you some context on why your grant wasn't funded. Because most likely, if you're submitting the same application again, you will not get funded again. And so definitely don't reapply until you have a feedback meeting with us, because that can definitely help strengthen your proposal.
I saw a hand raised. Lelia, do you have a question?
I did have a hand up. It's Lalia for pronunciation. And my question was answered. My question was about having, well, submitting applications in each quarter. And it was answered, I think. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Another question. How soon after the decision would the org receive funds if approved?
We, after decisions are made, there has to go to our board for a vote for approval. So the board has to vote. We tried to give them a week to get through their voting. And then we just move into a grant agreement process, which usually takes up to 2 weeks. Really, it really depends. We get the grant agreements out as soon as you get them back to us signed and correctly, we send them over to our finance team to get them paid. So it really moves at the pace of the signature with the caveat being that, sometimes, if there's like a couple days off or something, we might have a little bit of a extension depending on just managing holidays and the days that we work. SJF is closed on Friday, so yeah, Fridays are not a business day for us, so that's just something to keep in mind.
And then a question around, if granted, what are the reporting requirements?
Great question. All of our grants and grant agreements say that you will submit a report after the 1 year mark of doing the grant. So after a year of having the funds, you'll submit a report. Our reports are pretty simple, pretty simple questions that we have for folks to answer. And then if for some reason that report that we have doesn't work, we've done things like somebody can email something us for us a report, we can chat with them. We try to be flexible, and we're learning to be more gracious about how we do the reporting piece. It's just on our end, it's a compliance thing that we're trying to manage, but also trying to minimize the impact of the report. So if you got a grant in this year, like let's say you got a grant in March of 2025, the report wouldn't even come up again until March. That wouldn't come up until March of 2026. The request for a report wouldn't come up till March of 2026.
Thank you, folks. Any more questions? There are a couple more slides. Cool. We'll go to the next slide. You'll receive these links in an email afterwards, but a few important links here. The first one is the apply page in our grant portal. That's the public page where all grants that are open are listed. The actual login page, if you want to directly log in and start creating an account, or log in and start filling out the application. There's a link to our community organizing framework in case you need to review those again. There's also a link to past examples of seed grantees. And then I've shared 3 emails here. The first one is for Andriana, the director of our department. The second one is myself. And then the third email is our general grants at Social Justice Fund, which the whole GMI team has access to and are monitoring. And so oftentimes that's the best email to use if you're running into a tech issue. If you have an additional question that comes up after this information session, that would be the best email to reach out to. Next slide. All right, now opening it up for questions, comments, concerns once again. I think we can stop sharing. Feel free to put stuff into the chat, or at this point, you can probably just unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yes, we'll make sure that in this presentation, at the end of the presentation, there's some emails that will be in there, but also in the email, we'll reiterate which emails you can use to ask questions. And thank you, Moose, for also just dropping it in the chat if folks want to take it out of the chat now. Of course. Other questions? Of course. Okay, well, we won't hold you all hostage for 30 minutes. We'll stay on. The team will stay on just to be able to take questions if you guys are thinking of them. But if you all don't have any more, you're welcome to blob off or get 30 minutes back in your day for this. But the team will stay on if you have any other things that comes up between now and then. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing your applications. We're super excited for this relaunch. Yes.
Do you have any grantees up in like Snohomish County or Points North? Or do they mostly tend to be King? I know you listed different states, but I was just curious.
We have grantees across Washington. I probably couldn't name one in Snohomish like that right now. But we have grantees across Washington and get applications from folks across Washington for sure, often.
Okay. Cool beans. I will get started on mine.
Great. Looking forward to seeing it. And nice
Yes,
to see you.
and then let me know when you're local. We gotta hang out, gotta catch you up on all the things.
Definitely.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Woo woo. Any more questions? Thank you, Gabby.
Question. I'm not sure if anyone else would be interested in hearing about it, but I think like, so from my point of view, I was interested in applying because I am part of the ballroom community in Seattle, and we have a house that is trying to earn 501c3 status. I believe there's just some final steps for that process to go through. And I'm wanting to I'm new to like the grant writing and things like that for this, but basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to earn funds for the house so that we can throw events for the community and that will positively like impact our community members that attend the balls and also pay for teachers and instructors to come and give lessons to our community members in the categories that are kind of called for in the balls and things like that. So I'm curious, just because I came in a little bit late, I think some of like the bare minimum requirements were something about 3 years of like not experience, but like maybe like status or something like that before applying. Like, is this basically the right application pool for me? Should I be directed somewhere else? Like, I'm just kind of curious on like how like the information that I have will kind of be can be kind of used, I guess. I don't know. I'm just calling in because it was a grant thing, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll go. It seems creative, and we'll see how it goes.
No, that's a great question. So for this specific grant, our seed grant, we consider you have to be an organization or your work of the organization has to be 3 years old or younger. So if the work of the organization has been happening for over 3 years, then it wouldn't qualify for this pool of funding at SJF. So this is the only pool of funding at SJF that has that requirement. So our other grants, we don't have the 3 years or younger requirement, so there might be spaciousness in there. Related to funding events, we don't really do event and gather and community event funding directly unless you can make the case that that work is connected to community organizing work or is along the lines of the community organizing work you're doing. So if the organization is doing community organizing work as identified by our framework, which we'll make sure we send it's in the PowerPoint, we'll make sure we'll send out so you can reference, then we're open to considering, okay, here we can move money to this opportunity because it is in line with community organizing. If it's just more event funding or focus on a community or cultural gathering, you might consider our sponsorship dollars because that's where we spend more. We have more gracious space for funding that in our sponsorship dollars than we will in this specific pool, in the seed pool. Does that help clarify?
Okay. No, it's clear. I think what I'm hearing is yes, and it's just very dependent on what you all kind of consider community organizing. And I think I just have to look at that for reference to kind of continue on with like my further questions. So I think I will reference it. I will get back to you all. Well, in this case, I'll wait to hear back to see who I can continue talking to. Um, and yeah, I think I think more so I'm just trying to think, is this application going to be for an event? I don't think it's specific for an event. I mean, we are an organization, we are a house, and since we are a house and we are and sorry, I'm at school right now.
It's
It's after school, the bells are ringing and everything. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like, this organization, I'm very much so new in it. I'm assuming no independent people can apply for this. Is that correct?
yes, we don't fund individuals.
Hmm. So yeah, I think I just need to sit on this and really just think about it because thank you for the information. Again, like I'm new and I'm still trying to figure out like what grants are good grants for me to apply in. So I'll just continue looking at things and see what opportunities you all have. But I appreciate this time though. I'm sorry I came late. Oh my gosh.
No, you're totally fine. That's why we record it so you can get all of the background pieces as well. And if you're in the process and have other questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to us at the grant
Okay.
side because we're happy to answer questions along the way because we don't want people to feel like they're wasting their time if it's just not a clear alignment. So please feel free to reach out if questions come up between now and then.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Am
Of
I like the
course.
only Okay, never mind. Sorry. I'm just gonna go. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Y'all have a
coming.
wonderful evening.
You also. I see we have a question in the chat. Since this is seed money, how much is the history of my org considered? We don't have a ton of history yet, but a lot of plans of things were in the works. Since you don't have a lot of history, this is the perfect grant for you to be a part of because the questions allow you to actually speak to what's your intention and what the goals of your project hope to be and will be, and how you work to create that, even if it hasn't been created yet. So history is only slightly considered. If you have history that helps make your case, great. If you don't have history, just make sure you clarify what the intention and how you want how that project will lead you towards the work of our community organizing. Awesome. Any other questions for folks?
I have a question.
Sure.
My question is if there's a group, so for my situation, it's called the Miss India Northwest pageant, and it started in 1969, and it really was just a Native American cultural pageant for young women. But since last year, we got some new leadership and really started doing community organizing and putting on like community events in the Portland area. Like we did our first Indigenous Peoples Day celebration that they've ever had in the Gresham area. And then we've put on like holiday events and things for the community. Would that be considered 3 years or younger since we've never done community organizing before until last year?
If your community organizing work is new or 3 years of younger, yes, but you want to
Okay.
make sure that you clarify that in your application.
Okay.
Because if they read something like, "Oh, we've been around since 19," sorry, I'm forgetting the number you said.
Yeah.
It might just get screened out because people might miss that that's the qualification. So just clarify, like even if it's that last question about how
Okay.
that work is new.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for asking your question. Others?
I have one more too.
Yes.
For the general sponsorships that you were just speaking about, would an organization be eligible for that if it's for a culturally specific event that they're wanting to have that does serve as a learning environment that welcomes all communities to be a part of?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, hi. Okay. think maybe some of these left over are folks just listening to final questions and or folks that are logged in. So we're going to wrap it up. If you all have any follow-up questions for us, please feel free to email us at grants@socialjusticefund.org. And we'll make sure we send this PowerPoint and presentation to folks via email so you can have that as a reference as well.